Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with New York City jazz baritone saxophonist Claire Daly. She talked about her latest 2020 CD, Rah Rah. It's a reissue that celebrates the music and influence of the great Rahsaan Roland Kirk. It came out on Ride Cymbal Records during the pandemic and interesting times here on planet Earth. We cover the music, COVID-19, and so much more with Claire. Enjoy.
Wonderful. Hey, Claire, thanks for taking a minute out. I really enjoy the new album and not so much enjoying this new world, but we can talk about all of it.
Yeah. Let's chat.
So let's begin with, we're obviously in very strange times all the way around, especially for musicians not being able to perform for as long as you have. When did you realize all of these massive dominoes were falling in early to mid-March?
I was a little late to the party. I had gone to California. I was going to be out there for a month, and I had a couple gigs where I was seeing some people and doing some other things, and after a week, I had to come back, and that was to New York City, and that was March 17th. So it was March 16th when I really saw that it was, that this was no joke, and I better get home while I could. I dragged all my stuff to the airport. I took an overnight, a red-eye flight, and got home at 6 in the morning. I waited for the grocery store to open. I bought a couple of weeks' worth of food, and I was home for a couple of weeks. It's crazy.
The whole thing's been crazy. So how have you adapted over this time creatively?
Thank you for asking. Yes, I have. I think that I'm adapting pretty well. By that I mean I include extreme ups and downs in the fact that I'm doing well. Like, some days I just think, oh my God, everything is over. And other days I think, wow, this is amazing what's happening. And I'm watching the most amazing time in New York City that I've ever seen. And I lived, I grew up in the suburbs in the 70s. So I remember when New York was a scary place before. But what's happening now, and I'm looking out my window as I'm talking to you, New York City had become an island of millionaires. And there were no bad neighborhoods left in New York, and I said bad in quotes, but because it wasn't that dangerous, and everything was kind of fancy. And right now, the people in those situations, the people that had the means to leave, a lot of them left or have gone somewhere else for a while, and it's a much more diverse. I mean, I'm looking at everybody on the street. It's beautiful. It's beautiful here. Is that weird to say?
Wow. No.
And here's another thing that happened today. Oh, this was just great. I'm going to put a post up about it or something on Instagram. I went to the dentist this morning. My dentist is seeing people. Everybody's doing it carefully, and it's great. So I went to the dentist, and I was walking down Fifth Avenue, and I passed the New York Public Library, and there are these two huge lions, that sit in front of the library. They're famous. They're photographed a lot, and they have masks on them. These giant masks on the big lions, and I just thought, I love this sound so much. I love how we are adjusting. And then I came home and I looked it up, and the names of those two lions are Patience and Fortitude. And they're named that by LaGuardia, Mayor LaGuardia, during the Depression, because he thought those were the two things that people were going to need to get through the economic depression.
Man, that's deep.
Isn't that great? I was like,
yeah.
Wow, Patience and Fortitude, man. I'm in. I have that. Although, if you can find another planet for us to go to, I would go.
Yeah,
I would consider another planet.
It's interesting because Kansas City has a very, very energetic, smart, young African-American mayor, Quentin Lucas, and we have these big dinosaurs in front of our Union Station, and I was just taking a photo in front of it with my son yesterday, and it was a big Chiefs mask over it, and that's been kind of the sentiment that's gone on here. He's been very early, like Cuomo, about putting masks on and being serious about this and taking everything in stride. But, you know, there was one musician, Daniel Bennett, that I interviewed when this started, and he's a lifetime New Yorker, and he was very resolute about the fact, you know what, we got to stop being negative, you know. If you have right to complain, but really kind of was talking about, you know, how resolute New York is going to be. And this was in the beginning when the death rates were high every single day, and no one knew what was going to happen.
Oh, wow.
But, yeah, he's been very resolute.
Well, good on him.
Yeah. So
good on his spiritual condition.
Yeah.
he's in good shape.
Yeah.
It took the first month, I'll tell you that the first month I was wiped out. I didn't know what was happening. Every day, I didn't want to go to the computer. Like, every day, it's like, who's it going to be today? I mean, people I knew, and we had 800 people dying a day here for a while. It was very, very intense. And I didn't know what was going to happen or if I would ever be relevant or if music was even important. I actually had those thoughts. Isn't that crazy?
So did I.
I've got to say, too, like, you know, you in a crisis, you want to have some artists around and some creative thinking because it really helps. It has helped me so. Now, what happened with me? So I didn't practice a lot. Now, in my mind, I thought, I should be practicing 6 hours a day. I've got nothing to do, and nobody's going anywhere. And, you know, it's crazy. And in my practice place, where I go to practice, other people live there. So I go in the day, and then they're all working from home. So they didn't really want to, you know, blasting saxophone on their conference calls or whatever they're doing. And so I was practicing in my beautiful little studio, but quietly because people were around, and I wasn't very inspired. But then there's a fabulous rehearsal studio around the corner, and the owner happened to know that I lived, you know, a block away. And he said, if you want to use the studio to practice. So that was the turnaround for me. I went there and I blasted for a couple hours. You know, and I like to play quiet. I'm not a blaster, but practicing, you know, I just needed to flow like that. And that's turned the whole game around. I'm healed and I'm back in music. Wonderful.
And when I think about the baritone has that quality where it can really cut through the air and blast out there. So that's a good visual. So, you know, the one thing too is that, you know, I did talk to a musician at one point that said, you know, everyone that releases an album during this pandemic is going to hold a very special place in the anthem of recorded music and all of this. What have been your thoughts on releasing an album during a pandemic?
Well, this is a wonderful question, and I have to say that this is the story of this release. This is actually a re-release of a record that I had on my website that I made some years back. And at the time, I was probably on Koch Jazz, which was run by Donald Elfman. Or maybe I had been on. He produced my first two records. And Donald called me. Now, we've stayed friends, and he lives in Philly. We have lunch if he's in town. You know, we have about 1 million laughs, and, you know, we've got a friendship. And he called me kind of out of the blue and said, I'm listening to your Rahsaan record. Did anyone ever release this? And I said, well, just me on my website, because I hand drew all the covers and stuff. And he said, well, I'll put it out if you want, because he's got a small, you know, personal label. I was like, sure. This was in the beginning of the pandemic. And he just put that whole thing together in like 2 months, got it packaged. You know, I sent him the picture from the Cafe Stritch in California. And Steve Futterman wrote some notes, and he just put it together. And so the joy of it for me is who has better energy to draw on right now than Rahsaan Roland Kirk? You know?
Yeah,
like
without a doubt.
Who was more unstoppable? Talk about fortitude. Let's talk about fortitude. Like Rahsaan Roland Kirk, who was, you know, he's my hero on 100 levels. And I just think what a wonderful time to release, to put this energy out in Rahsaan's direction. And so I was not inspired by the pandemic to do this record. And I think that people that are inspired or were inspired to write throughout it, I think that will be fascinating. I think there will be really new stuff from people. Yeah.
Yeah, I do too. And I think that's the thing I've realized. There's so many revelations I've had about the world of jazz that, has been pretty seminal during this time. And one of them is, jazz musicians are already run into an artistic situation of the unknown, and you have to come up with something in improv quick, and it can take any kind of what's going to happen once. But also, too, there's a level of musicianship that goes into this that's not about money. You're fighting for money all the time. So there's an adaptability that's already woven into who you are, which that adaptability in a business sense is also going to be a part of your creative sense. So realistically at this time, like for instance, one of the musicians, there was a young musician that actually left New York and went back home to Ohio because things were just bad. He was young. He just got out of school, had his first album.
Oh, yeah.
And he said something that has resonated with me the whole time since, and this was very early on he said this. He said, I want you to understand something. Charlie Parker and Dizzy and all those cats were creating bebop on the heels of a very major war, a lot of racism, lots of things that are mirroring what's going on right now. And they came up with it for nothing more than creative purposes. There was no label telling them to do it. There was no business forces saying, let's do it. So his point was, right now, with what we're going through, there could be an idiom that could be born out of this that no one even knows about.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So jazz is ripe right now for those kinds of things, and the artists are probably pretty much in tune with things to create that material.
Yeah, I mean, I got to tell you that here, also, like another thing, now some stuff is still boarded up because it's closed. But there was that period right after the George Floyd thing where all the stores, everybody was boarding up the stores because there were demonstrations on the street and, they were just doing that. So like Soho in the beginning, downtown, became, completely boarded up. Artists went out there and painted the most amazing things. You can probably look that up online. There must be a million pictures of this stuff. Great, like fabulous creative artists went out and painted on the boarded up storefronts.
Yeah.
It's temporary. It only lives. Like, I would think it would be really fun to be a photographer in this time. I actually do it. I take pictures a lot. The crazy inventive things that people are doing to be okay is just beautiful. It's on a soul level. It's just beautiful. Now this, I'm looking now at a couple of this cracks me up endlessly. The parking spaces in New York City are restaurants now. They let them have the parking spaces in front of all the restaurants, and they build these things, these structures, and some of them are really nice, by the way. And they build structures on either the parking spaces in the street or in the sidewalks. And people have been sitting outside eating. Now, that will end probably as it gets much colder, but, maybe some of them will get space heaters. It's the creative drive is really picking up here, I will say.
Yeah, I went gonzo when this started, too, and was taking so many pictures, like recognizing things that I hadn't really done before because I've taken a lot of pictures over the years, and I love doing it. And I remember at one point, one of the most profound things that happened, probably, I would say late April, early May, I was at I live by a nature sanctuary, and I was sitting in the car with my son, and I think we were wrapping up an interview, and I start seeing this bald eagle flying around. And I'd never really seen a bald eagle that much up front like that.
Yeah.
And this thing goes over the lake and just plucks this fish out. And I'm just sitting there thinking, wow. And then this little elderly Chinese man next to me gets out of his car and looks over, and he says, I've been coming to this lake for 15 years waiting to see that, and just got back into his car. And I'm just sitting there thinking, wow. Yeah, and I took pictures, but I was so far away. But it was the notion that those kinds of things left. Like I saw weird things like deer running out in front of me, and a dog was chasing it because the earth slowed down enough so that dogs could chase deer. I mean, there was all kinds of weird things happening.
Yeah, no, exactly. You know, the whole air air pollution levels changed. You know, crazy. Like so much happened. I mean, here, and again, I only can speak from my little view of 6th Avenue in New York City. There was no one on the street for 2.5 months.
Yeah.
You would look out and see no cars, no humans. It was deserted, or it looked deserted. I mean, it was a ghost town. It looked like a ghost town. And we all, you know, like I live in a nice building and we have a roof, and I did, not every night, but I went up a bunch of times for the 7:00 shout out, you know, where everybody would clap for the people working, you know, the hospital workers. And that was poignant. That was very moving. I videoed a couple of those. All of New York just screaming out their windows.
And you know, what you guys are doing right now, what I hear from afar and what I've experienced this whole time is you all are exemplifying why New York is the greatest city in the world. You know, I mean, that's the thing that pulls you through. That's why I have faith this November, because humanity always finds a way to win. And when you get to that point where you're so tired of these things that are negative, you just have to put positive out there. That's what New Yorkers have been doing throughout this. I mean, that's been very evident.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not New York is the best and every place else sucks. Like I'm sorry I said that. Probably shouldn't. Am I on the radio now?
Well, I can take this out. I'm taking it, but
sorry.
I can take it.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, no,
we're
not live.
Say,
no.
You know,
no, you're good.
I'm trying to keep my language clean.
Yeah, me too.
But I'm not one of those people who, you know, who is like, oh, New York's the only place to be. Like, I think, you know, there are many great places. But this place is so great. And I was just appreciating it this morning, really, coming back, because my dentist and I were agreeing on that most of the people that we meet are good by nature, you know, people, and people are great. Like, but there's so much polarization right now that it's easy to forget that. But we need patience and fortitude. We need those 2 lions in front of the New York Public Library, and I'm going to put those on my Instagram. So come to Instagram later and
yeah,
and
totally,
and check them out. They're great.
Yeah, I will.
They're great.
So the one thing I do want to know too is when we do return, when we get to that point where there's live music, what do you hope both the audience and the musician realizes about this absence from live music?
Just how precious it is. How precious that we can be in a room together and play music for people or listen to music directly from people. You know, see, for me, live music is it. You know, for me, live music has been like the foundation of my soul. And while I have watched some of these things on Zoom, and you know, we're making the best of it we can, but nothing compares to being in a room with a group playing. So I feel like I never want to take anything or anybody for granted again. Like the gift of being able to do that. Who could have thought that we would not be able to do that?
Yeah.
It never occurred to me.
Yeah.
I took so much for granted that's what I hope coming out of it, is that I don't start taking things for granted again. And I'm going to probably sob through my first gig.
Yeah.
I would imagine.
I have seen several here in town. They have these drive-in concerts where you come in with the car and you get your...
Oh, yeah, yeah. How is that?
Yeah. Oh, man, it's amazing. We saw the Kansas City Jazz Orchestra, and the leader of the jazz orchestra was up talking, and the whole time he was talking to the crowd towards the end, it was before the last song, he was just on the verge of tears. Like, it was so much. And, you know, I'm sitting there watching this thinking, wow, like Friday night we heard this band called the Ensemble Iberica, and it's a lot of world music, but there's jazz, and it was a little bit rainy that day, so they put it all underground, and it was in the belly of this parking garage. And this dude came out with an alto, and the way that ricocheted off the concrete was amazing. It was like, oh my God. So the whole thing, I mean, the one of the musicians had an ode, and the others had these very eclectic instruments, and just the mix of it was like, wow, they were really, really good. And then the instrumentation, and then kind of having this Mad Max scene being underground was really unique too. So, I mean, there's things about this pandemic that have just thrown us for, well, we're all, I got my son involved with hockey. Well, he's a sports fan, so over the winter months, I finally got him into hockey, and we were watching it, and there was a guy for the Blues that had an aneurysm and collapsed about a week before this whole March thing happened. And I remember they canceled the game, and I came out, and I was like, I can't believe they just canceled the hockey games. Like, I'm like, not that they shouldn't have, but I just never see games get canceled. And I'm looking now and I'm thinking, oh my God. But nothing.
Yes.
It's just,
Isn't it
it's
wild
amazing.
The whole construct of time. I mean, I'm like, I keep going, it's been 6 months? Like, maybe it feels like maybe it's been 2 months. Or some days it could feel longer, but everything is, I mean, it's kind of great. To me, I have to say, and it takes work for me sometimes to adapt, but I feel like I'm embracing everything that I can. And, I mean, I did a Buddhist retreat this weekend. I mean, I'm not a Buddhist, but I am. I mean, I guess we all are, but something like that. I did a Buddhist retreat online this weekend that was great, and the title of it was Welcoming the Unwelcomed. It was Pema Chodron who writes these books, and welcoming the unwelcomed. We must adapt to what's happening, and I feel good. I mean, I have felt good ever since I started playing again. Oh, go figure. I've been really way more on the optimistic, upbeat, feeling about how we will come back, because yes, it will be different, and I'm not saying I'm going to like everything, but I do think it will take some time, and lots of new things will happen as a result of it.
I agree, and that's the thing about it. We have to, I mean, this is life after all, and I don't know that any of us have ever been through anything as extreme as a pandemic, and I think the thing about this is that all of the colors that you had before are only going to get exemplified in a very similar yet different way afterwards. So if you're negative before this, it's going to get mutated into negativity. If you're positive, it's going to come out positive, and that's just what you have to understand, and hopefully we all understand, But hopefully we all come out stronger on the other side of it. That's for sure.
Right, and keeping a sense of humor. I thank God I have a sense of humor that helps me get through, all the things that have come at me in life, and that's. I think we can rely on our skills to get us through, and hopefully we all have skills and we get each other through, and all the cliches now.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Well, Claire, thank you for opening up about the album and about this strange world, and good luck. Stay safe up there. I really appreciate it.
Oh yeah, no, thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in New York, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. Thanks to Claire for her time, music, and story. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com. And for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.